I've made several videos talking about Nikola Jokic being the MVP, and while today's not one of those videos per se, I want to talk about the Denver Nuggets as a team. Because for a while now, they've actually been on a little bit of a hot streak, winning 8 of their last 10 games. And of course, I can't forget the fact that Nikola Jokic is playing the best basketball of his life right now, trying to win back-to-back MVPs. So while I'm definitely going to be talking about Jokic in some sense, because obviously he's the most important part of this Denver Nuggets team, I want to talk about some other aspects. Because this team should scare you coming into the playoffs, and I'm not gonna lie, this team could do some damage in the postseason. Of course, before I get to the content, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new and notifications on. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel by the end of the year, and your subscription would be greatly appreciated. Let's get into the video. Let's start with some basic stuff. Nikola Jokic is playing the best basketball of his life right now. He's probably going to win MVP because, I mean, have you seen the way this man has been playing? And I've called it all year. And did I mention Nikola Jokic is practically carrying this team to a 6th seed in the Western Conference? Now, hold on. A lot of you guys might be saying, oh, 6th seed, they're just below average. They're really not that good. Let's take into context with their 40 wins if they were in the Eastern Conference. And chances are they'd be the 3rd seed, which is higher than the Sixers. Which just proves my point that the Western Conference is a lot more competitive than the Eastern Conference, but I think that's kind of been a thing going on for years. While the gap to be the 1st seed is currently closer right now in the Eastern Conference, if the Phoenix Suns weren't as hot as they were, I think the gap would also be this close as it is in the East when it comes to the West. So on paper, you see the 6th seed, but what you don't talk about is their 40-27, which is actually a really good record, which is something a lot of people like to talk about when it comes to the MVP discussion. They're like, oh, Nikola Jokic's team doesn't have that many wins, they're below average, they're a 6th seed, but again, context is a motherfucker. It's not to say the Nuggets are better than the Sixers, however, I just want to point out the same fact that they have just as many wins, and Nikola Jokic is practically doing it on his own. Now this year, the reason why I'm advocating for the Nuggets to do well in the playoffs and why I think, you know what, this team is going to be good is because we got an update a couple days ago. There's a report that Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray are going to be back for the playoffs. Do y'all have any idea how crucial that is for them? Nikola Jokic is the quarterback of this team, and he's able to make other players look like they're actually good at basketball and put them in situations to do good things. However, if you give him an all-star caliber guard in Jamal Murray and a guy like Michael Porter Jr., who I think has the potential to be an all-star and a top 10 player. I know there's going to be someone saying, oh, you lost me, you think Michael Porter Jr. is going to be a top 10 player. I know you're down there in the comment section, just shut the fuck up. And while Jamal Murray hasn't played basketball for a very long time, the injury he had could honestly alter his career, and that doesn't happen. I would imagine he can be an efficient player for the Nuggets, and if Nikola Jokic can carry this Nuggets team that if they didn't have him, they'd be a lottery team, I would like to imagine he can carry them with the additional help of Jamal Murray, who hasn't played basketball in nearly a year, and Michael Porter Jr. I do imagine the role of Nikola Jokic might go down a little bit, like stuff like his points per game and his assists, because of Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. returning back to the lineup. They're probably going to get their fair share of points and assists and all the other bullshit. I still imagine though, just like last year, that Nikola Jokic is still going to play like the MVP, and I'm still advocating for this, but I think he's going to win it. I made a video a couple days ago why I said Nikola Jokic is the MVP of the NBA, and I'm going to put it in the link in the description below, or you can just go on my channel. I made it like 2 to 3 days ago. I won't lie, I've talked a lot of shit about this Nuggets team with the fact that I've said, oh, you know, it's basically a bunch of nobodies getting carried by Nikola Jokic, which is half true but isn't fully true because the Nuggets actually have a lot of talent. It's just that most people watch Nuggets games for Nikola Jokic and not some of these other guys. And I'm a part of those people, don't get it twisted. The fact that the Denver Nuggets got DeMarcus Cousins on a 10-day contract, having guys like Aaron Gordon and Monte Morris, Will Barton, even Jeff Green, can't forget about Austin Rivers. So it's not to say they don't have talent or they have depth, because if I was saying that they didn't, I'd be lying. And I will say last year, this team, obviously minus Jamal Murray, made it past the Portland Trailblazers, but is that really much of an accomplishment? And then inevitably would get swept by the Suns. Yeah, y'all are never living that down. I can promise you that. All jokes aside, while the Denver Nuggets definitely had some talent last year, and I'm not going to take that away from them, I think they desperately needed Jamal Murray. Plus, with DeMarcus Cousins, they're going to have some depth at the center position. Now, I want to keep in mind that the standings are not going to stay the same. They're going to. Besides the Suns, I don't see really any other team in the Western Conference where the standings are going to remain the same. However, if the Nuggets are staying at the 6th seed, they would either play the Warriors or the Grizzlies, just depending on what night. I'm not gonna lie, that's gonna be a very tough first round matchup. Having Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, DeMarcus Cousins, all these other guys will definitely help them in a playoff situation, especially versus a team like the Warriors, which is filled with vets. Then again, the Warriors have kind of been deteriorating a little bit over these past couple weeks. I know this is so fucking ironic because the Nuggets just lost the Warriors last night, but let me make my point. Not gonna lie, I think a very key aspect to this Nuggets team has also been the arrival of Monte Morris. I say arrival like he was a free agent or the Nuggets got him out of a trade, but no, he's been on the team for a while. He's just been balling out this season. This season, Monte Morris is averaging about 13 points per game on nearly 50, 40, 86% splits, while having a true shooting percentage of 58%. So I think we can definitely say that he's an efficient shooter. I talked about him earlier on in the video when I was talking about depth for the center position, but DeMarcus Cousins has been very vital for the Nuggets. What I think is so interesting to me is that years ago, DeMarcus Cousins was arguably the best center in the NBA. Sure, he was known as an emotional player to some people, but we could all admit that DeMarcus Cousins was a really good center that used to dominate back in the day. I think a lot of people thought that Pelicans team with Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins was supposed to be the next big thing, and they were easily the best big man duo in the NBA. Unfortunately for them, they played in a time where Golden State was just taking off and there was nothing they could have done about it. And if we skip to present day, this man DeMarcus Cousins is being thrown team to team to team like a journeyman. Like years ago, he wasn't the best center in the NBA at one point. The other night, he had like a 31-point performance and a lot of people were saying, oh, vintage boogie, vintage boogie. However, I hate when people use that term. I don't know why. I just think it kind of sucks for the players they're saying about, like when D-Rose had that 50-point performance and we said, oh, vintage D-Rose. As Derrick Rose is no longer the MVP player he was, and a lot of people could say it was due to his knee injury, he's still an efficient player. And while Boogie was never an MVP and he wasn't exactly liked by the media, I think we can all say one thing. Boogie now has found himself in a situation where he has an opportunity to win a championship with a team like the Nuggets. He's not a starter, and some people would say that he's not even that vital to the team. However, I would argue differently that he's very important to this roster. Whether it's the veteran leadership or it's the fact that there are times when DeMarcus Cousins can be really good for this team and they desperately are going to need this if they want to win a series. I mean, there are certain lineups you could run that involves having Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., Monte Morris, and DeMarcus Cousins and Nikola Jokic out there at the same time. Obviously, Aaron Gordon is the primary power forward, and I don't think that's going to change even if DeMarcus Cousins started putting up 25, 10, and all these other weird numbers. While to most people, most players that are averaging about 9 and 6 are really not considered that talented of players or even vital to a team. I think DeMarcus Cousins is a little bit of an exception. So while the Nuggets are the 6th seed in the Western Conference right now, they have an opportunity to jump up to 4 or maybe even 3. And whether it's the scary depth on this team with some old veterans, some talented young players, or the fact that Jamal Murray's coming back, y'all should be scared of the Nuggets, especially when they have the league MVP.